Hello, this is Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred podcast. Before I get into what I want to do today, I want to thank everybody for an amazing year. January will be the beginning of season 2 of the Living Undeterred project and podcast and blogs. And I am very excited and humbled and honored to be able to bring this to you to try to help you deal with whatever you're dealing with life that we all have to deal with, unfortunately and fortunately. But for those of you that are new to this, I've been doing Living Undeterred since January, a weekly blog and a weekly podcast. And I met some absolutely amazing human beings that have changed my life to the core. People have dealt with obviously alcoholism, addiction, attempted suicide, suicidal ideation, sex abuse, discrimination, you name it. So many different situations people have had to deal with. And it is inspiring to think that my story can help others. And there is something to say about the healing that comes from being vulnerable. And I talk about that a lot. Matter of fact, a blog I wrote early on this journey was called My Addiction to Vulnerability. And I talked about the concerns I was having that I was actually telling my story too frequently. And that every time I told my story, a little bit of me was chipped off. But the reality is that may be true, but something does grow back stronger. And that is the process of healing. And it is a process. You don't wake up one day and just become healed. I think that's an illusion, I'd like to say. It's a never-ending daily process to improve our lives. Back to my story a little bit. It's amazing to think what has happened the last 5 years. I'm 55 years old. So 5 years ago, on top of the world, everything going well. Most of you have heard this story before. Our son Seth died of a heroin overdose laced with fentanyl, which is now a household word in the country, or it should be, on October 4th, 2016. And that changed the trajectory of my life and those around us. Wrote a book called This One's For You, An Inspirational Journey Through Addiction, Death, and Meaning, which, by the way, the book is now out on audiobook, and it's my voice. So those of you that want to hear what I have to say and literally hear what I have to say, you can get the book on all the audiobook or Audible or Kindle, whatever it's called. I'm not exactly sure on the technology end of it, but I spent about 6 months in the studio with John Limmer from the Soundbox, so a shout out to John. Did a great job editing. There was times I had to leave the studio. I had not read the book for a while, so it was tough to go back there. But like I said, every time you chip something off the armor, something grows back stronger. So keep that in mind as you're working through whatever you're going through. So started the nonprofit, the Choices Network, and then obviously the big tour next summer. The Living Undeterred U.S. tour that we're leaving on May 9th. So a couple things I want to do. This will be a very short podcast today. With Thanksgiving and everything and some of the other things that happened, it's been difficult for me to stay focused on some of these projects. My lovely mom of 89 years, Jerry, died a week ago. Today's November 24th, so it was a week ago today, roughly. On top of that, losing my wife 4 months ago has made focus difficult at times. You get distracted, you get going on certain things, and then boom, life throws you a curveball. So in my case, I lost my son, my wife, and my mom in the wrong order. Typically, we bury our parents and grandparents first, and then, God forbid you bury your spouse, but then you hope you never have to bury a child. That's a club that I didn't ask to be a member of, and I can't get out of. The reality is, it is odd to think that I did bury 3 people near and dear to my heart, and it was really in a unique order that you typically don't see. But it did build a strong foundation in me, and I talk a lot about the foundation that we build as we go through life. And the Two Roads chapter in my book is very appropriate for this, in that whenever something happens to you, you always have two roads to go down. You have one road of anger, despair, and hatred, and you become an alcoholic or an addict yourself. Or you have a road of inspiration and motivation, and that event can be the single greatest motivator for you and those around you for the rest of your life. And so I hope that after you hear and feel and see my story, you'll be inspired to take the second road, because that's the road I'm on. I'm not telling you that I haven't had bad days. I did a podcast a while back about a moment where I had a lapse in judgment. I didn't prepare very well. I skipped meditation, skipped working out, and I had a bad weekend. But I'm here and survived, and trying to improve my life. A couple things I'll say to clean things up here as we move into, obviously, the holiday season. Next week, I'm going to do a special. It's going to be called Ask Jeff. And here's why I want to do this. And believe me, I don't have this tremendous amount of knowledge and answers to all these questions. I actually enjoy dialogue and conversation more than I do providing people what they think are answers. I think that's kind of arrogant in a way to think I know a lot more than other people. I don't. My life from this point on is a research project, and I'm trying to research as much information and data and unique people out there to arm that quiver with arrows to deal with trauma and life and grief and all these things that we deal with, or the toolbox, people like to say. But next week, I'm doing an Ask Jeff episode for an hour. So I've got the best questions that people have asked me. Jeff, what's your thoughts on the afterlife? What's your thoughts on God? What are your top 3 things you do every day to deal with trauma and grief? How'd you write a book? How'd you get motivated to write a book? Talk about your nonprofit. What's it entail to start a nonprofit? I've always been thinking to start one. I've got lots of great questions that I want to answer next week. So look forward to that. That'll be on December 3rd. And then Molly is putting together a best of on December 10th. So the last 2 episodes of this year should be exciting ones. The Ask Jeff episode on December 3rd, and then December 10th, we're going to have a best of, where she's going to pull my most important conversations that I had, and maybe the funny moments, maybe some bloopers, whatever she wants to find in regards to the podcast that I've been doing. So again, I am humbled. I'm honored. I don't think I have anything special here. As I like to tell people, I'm just a dad from Iowa that is impassioned now. And I'm not mad. I'm not an angry dad. And that is an interesting dynamic. I meet people on this journey that are angry. They're mad that their child committed suicide, or they're mad that their daughter or son died from an overdose. And I've buried that hatchet. I'm not mad at anybody. I don't think getting mad is going to make my life better. It may solve some problems, but it certainly isn't going to make my life better. I don't have a lot of anger in my heart. So I'm on a research project. That's what this tour is next summer. The Living Undeterred U.S. tour starts on May 9th. And I'm going to be gathering as much data as I can to help people deal with life. Not necessarily what I went through, because quite honestly, I haven't met many people that went through what I went through. And so it's difficult for me to find somebody that has, lost a child, lost a wife, and then obviously lose your mom, all within a 5-year period of time in 3 different circumstances. It wasn't like it was a car wreck or something. So here I am, excited about the end of the year, happy to be with family, and season 2 of Living Undeterred is going to be incredible. I cannot wait to. We're going to redo the studio here. We're going to do a lot of different things. I'm going to have potentially an employee with me this time. I know Molly's been doing heroic work on my projects, but she still runs my investment firm as well, Premier Investments of Iowa. So I've been pulling from her, and so we got to decide kind of how we're going to pull that off. But I think it's important I continue the story. I think it's important I hear your story. This is a we story, not a me story. And that's very important for you to understand. Too many people in what I do, talking about what happened to them, spend an inordinate amount of time talking about themselves. I want to make this more about you. I want to have you on my podcast. I want to have you reach out to me. Next year when I do the tour and go around the country, go to every single state, I want to meet other Jeff Johnstons, other Steve Grants, other Wayne Coffees, other people, Mike Pierce, other people have been through trauma or been through tough times, but they found a way to break through. Those are the people I want to find. And hopefully, collectively, our stories can help change the lives of other people that maybe haven't found that why factor yet. You find your way when you find your why. And most of us haven't found our why. Mine was presented to me in the form of death. Yours may be something completely different. But either way, whatever it takes to get you to improve your life is what I'm trying to find answers for, those questions. The statistics are horrendous. It's now coming out that we're going to have over 100,000 deaths from overdose in 2021. That's just unfathomable. It's inexcusable, yet it's very predictable, but it's preventable. And when Seth died, there was 56,000 deaths overdose in the United States. Last year, looking at 100,000. We know more about this information. Everybody knows what fentanyl is. We know it's being put in these drugs to make the doses stronger, yet people are still dying. The real fear for me is when fentanyl starts creeping into marijuana or Xanax, which has already been cases of Xanax, or maybe vaping. I mean, that day is coming. And if we can't get people to understand, drug dealers don't test drugs. There's no centralized testing agency to take your heroin and test it. And we'll talk about that. I have my opinions on harm reduction and what I think about that. I think the war on drugs has been a colossal disaster. Throwing more people in prison and incarcerating more people instead of working with the real issues of mental health and substance abuse disorder and addiction issues. And the war on drugs, the border. I just saw the other day that the largest amount of fentanyl and heroin I think ever confiscated, or at least this year, was confiscated from a truck that had come through the border legally. So these weren't illegal people coming through, swimming across the river and climbing over the wall. These were people that just drove through in their truck and got through customs, and then they got pulled over, and they found the largest amount of fentanyl, I think, year to date on the Mexican border. But they were actually on the American side. They actually made it through customs. So I don't know what the right answer is. I know what the wrong answers are, and that's keep doing what we're doing. If someone can show me that what we're doing is working, then I'd be happy to talk about it. But I don't think it is. I think every statistic across the board, every single statistic is worse. And you can't tell me that our country, we are happier as citizens. We aren't. On the highest suicide rates year over year. And I saw a study on this, and I talked about this on the show once, were white middle-aged men. Me, my brothers, my business partner. Doesn't mean that there isn't high percentages across the board. I think they're all up. Adolescents, African Americans, homosexuals, people that are, people that have come out. I think homosexual adolescents have a 7 times higher rate of suicide than heterosexual. So nothing's working. But there's one thing that will, and that's communication. And being active and being supportive and being compassionate, having empathy. I do think those things can work. So again, these are some of the things I wanted to talk about today. So next week I have my Ask Jeff episode, which I'll be taping. The week after that, I'm going to have the best of, and then we're going to take 2 weeks off going into Christmas to redesign the studio, kind of refocus our vision on how to do this Living Undeterred podcast. Also the blogs as well. I'm going to resurrect those and get back into writing the blogs. I really enjoyed that. It's a good outlet for me. But I think I'll wrap up today. It's been about 14 minutes. I think I'll wrap up today with the tour. And for those of you that, we have a lot of people that have sent their emails in through the Living Undeterred website. That's the first thing I would recommend that you do. You go to livingundeterred.com And you'll find on the site where you can send in an inquiry to be either a state partner, and those are the facilities that will actually be stopping by the day of the tour, or you can be a tour sponsor, and that's where you're actually donating, and we need corporate America to step up. I have a feeling once this thing gets going that we'll have a lot of people jumping on late, which is fine. I don't have, say, an agenda with this other than I'm going to do it. I'm going to get an RV. I'm going to go around the country with my family, and I'm going to meet many people that have been through what I have been through, or will go through what I have been through, or have been through worse. It's hard to imagine that there are people out there that have been through worse, but I guarantee you there are thousands and thousands of people that have lost 2, 3 kids to overdoses or suicide. So I want to meet you. I want to hear your story. I want to share what you're doing on my website to try to help others. And that really, someone asked me the other day, Jeff, what's your end game? What's your overall objective? That's a really good question. Matter of fact, it's so good, I'll save my answer for my Ask the Jeff episode. Because there's a lot of moving parts with that. But first of all, as I wrap up this show and wrap up this year, I want to thank everybody for everything. The people I met on specifically LinkedIn has been amazing, absolutely amazing. Facebook, Twitter, the support has been phenomenal. I've learned a ton. I've absolutely learned a lot about everything that I work with right now. And I'm going to keep learning. The moment I think I have found the answers to everything is the day I die, and I'm not ready for that yet. So, and I'm not going to let Seth and Prudence specifically die for nothing. My mom, 89, had a wonderful life, a super life, and I don't have regrets with that, with her passing. It was her time to go. She died in the house where she raised her family. I mean, I hope I can do that. Or as I tell Roman, I hope when I die, I'm eaten by sharks in the Caribbean. That would be a fitting way for me to end my life, to get devoured by sharks. But we'll worry about that later. But again, love my mom, love my wife, love my son, and I will honor them for the rest of my life in trying to help others. So with that, I'm going to end the show for today. Under 20 minutes, which was my goal. And I want to thank Molly, as always. If you have questions and you want to get involved in any way, shape, or form, you want to be a guest on my podcast, you have ideas for a blog, you want me to be a guest on your podcast, you want to be on the tour, you want to be a state partner, you want to be a tour sponsor, reach out to me on livingundeterred.com. My email is jjohnston4666@gmail.com. Again, that's jjohnston4666@gmail.com. But the easiest way to reach me is through the Living Undeterred website. And with that, have a great holiday. And as always, please keep living and loving undeterred. Thank you.